Imagine someone is building a ship.
Right, like a massive luxury liner or something.
Exactly, a magnificent world-changing ship. And they spend years selling tickets to you, to the masses, putting out, these glossy press releases about how this vessel is going to revolutionize human travel forever.
The hype is just absolutely deafening.
Yeah, deafening. But then, right before the maiden voyage, in the dead of night, the builders silently sell off every single life jacket they own.
Wow.
They grab their personal wealth, climb into a little dinghy, and quietly row away. So welcome to your custom-tailored deep dive. Today, our mission is to completely cut through the massive public hype surrounding artificial intelligence and immersive virtual realities.
Because there is a lot of hype.
Oh, so much. And to do that, we are looking at a forensic financial analysis that suggests this exact sinking ship scenario. That's exactly what the architects of the modern internet are doing right now.
Yeah, and the author of this financial analysis takes a very specific approach. They completely ignore the keynote speeches, the social media marketing, the visionary interviews.
This is usually all we hear about.
Right, exactly. Instead, the focus is strictly on legally binding disclosures filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So, specifically, the Form 10-K annual reports.
The really dry, boring stuff nobody reads.
Exactly. But the contrast between the public marketing narrative, this idea of a boundless technological utopia, and the audited legal documentation is incredibly stark.
So what are the documents actually saying?
Well, according to the data presented in this report, there is a coordinated, massive equity divestment underway by the very tech leaders who are building these immersive digital worlds.
A systematic abandonment, essentially.
Where, pretty much.
But, to really evaluate this premise, we need to understand the mechanics of how this invisible wealth transfer is even happening. Because the source isn't just dealing in metaphors, right? It actually provides a timeline.
Right. It tracks the insider trading velocity over the past 36 months. And this is among the top 50 technology conglomerates. So the major players building the hardware and software for spatial computing and VR.
And the core statistic the author highlights here is just massive. It's a 300% increase in planned equity divestment programs compared to the historical 5-year average.
Yeah, a 300% increase. I mean, that moves us far beyond just standard portfolio diversification.
Right, like selling some stock to buy a yacht or whatever.
Yeah, when an executive occasionally sells stock to buy a house or pay a tax bill, that falls perfectly within historical averages. The author argues that a spike of this magnitude represents a systematic evacuation of capital.
So how are they actually doing this without everyone noticing?
Well, to illustrate how these executives execute this, the report provides a very specific chronology. About 24 months ago, a leading pioneer in social media and virtual infrastructure filed a Form 10-K. To a casual observer, it seemed like standard corporate reporting. But a forensic analysis of the footnotes revealed a sudden, completely unannounced acceleration in the vesting schedules for both the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer.
Wait, let's clarify that for anyone who doesn't, spend their days reading executive compensation tables. Accelerating a vesting schedule basically means the board of directors agreed to hand over the stock payouts much faster than the original employment contract dictated, right?
Exactly. They unlocked the vault early.
But they didn't just cash the check and walk away, did they?
No, not at all. According to the analysis, immediately after those shares vested, these executives enacted automated selling plans. And we should probably spend a minute on this because understanding these plans is it's crucial to understanding the author's whole thesis.
Yeah, please explain that because it sounds highly technical.
So the mechanism here is known as SEC Rule 10b5.1. Historically, the SEC created this rule in the early 2000s as a safe harbor. The idea was to allow corporate insiders to sell their stock without being accused of insider trading.
Right, so they can say, hey, I planned this months ago.
Exactly. If an executive sets up a predetermined automated schedule to sell a specific number of shares on specific dates months in advance, they are legally shielded.
That makes sense in theory.
It does. However, the forensic analysis we are looking at argues that this rule has been weaponized. It's become a form of regulatory arbitrage. Over an 18-month period, these specific executives use these automated plans to liquidate roughly 40% of their personal holdings in very small algorithmic increments.
See, the algorithmic increments part is fascinating to me. It's like slowly letting the air out of a tire over several days.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, if you slash the tire, it makes a loud noise, the car drops immediately, and everyone in the parking lot turns to look.
But if you just let a tiny hiss of air out every single hour, nobody notices the tires going flat until it is entirely empty. Yeah, and they have to do it that way. The sheer volume of stock these executives hold is so massive that they have to be quiet about it.
Because if they weren't quiet, it would crash the stock.
Absolutely. The market mechanics dictate that approach. I mean, a stock price isn't some magical inherent number. It is simply the last price someone was willing to pay.
Right.
So if the CEO of a major tech conglomerate suddenly dumps 40% of their stock onto the open market on a random Tuesday morning, supply instantly overwhelms demand. It triggers a massive market panic.
Everyone would just freak out.
Exactly. Institutional algorithms would flag the massive sell order, the stock price would plummet instantly, and the executive would lose billions of dollars in value before their trade even finished executing.
So by dripping the shares into the market via algorithm, they avoid all that.
Yes, and that introduces a critical concept the author calls exit liquidity.
Which means for every single share the algorithm automatically sells, someone else has to be on the other side of that trade, actively hitting the buy button.
Right, and this is where the author's data becomes genuinely concerning. The report tracks institutional fund flows, so the major banks, mutual funds, hedge funds.
That's smart money.
Yeah, the smart money. Their buying velocity is not keeping pace with the velocity of executive selling. So the question becomes, who is providing the exit liquidity?
Let me guess. It's us.
According to the data, yes. It's everyday retail investors. You know, the public is watching the shiny product launches for these new VR headsets and AI tools. They're feeling a sense of FOMO and they're buying the stock.
Wow. So they are unknowingly purchasing shares at premium prices while the algorithmic plans of the billionaires quietly dump them.
Exactly.
Okay, so the financial mechanics of how they are selling are pretty clear. The author has established the what. But the logical next question is, the why.
Why walk away from the table right now?
Exactly. These companies are standing on the precipice of releasing the most height technological advancements of our lifetimes. I mean, they are pivoting their entire corporate identities and capital expenditures toward immersive VR and artificial intelligence.
It's a massive pivot.
Right, so betting against your own company at that exact moment seems totally paradoxical.
It is the central paradox of the entire analysis. Executives are utilizing these legally blind selling plans right as they publicly stake their company's future on these immersive environments.
Which just doesn't add up.
No, because standard economic theory dictates that if you genuinely believe your product is the future of human interaction, you hold your equity to reap the exponential rewards.
So what's the author's theory?
The source material proposes two distinct models or scenarios for why this exodus is happening right now. Scenario one is pretty straightforward. The technology is fundamentally flawed.
Flawed in a way the public doesn't realize yet. So it's not just that the headsets are a little heavy or the battery life is short.
No, the author's hypothesis goes much deeper than that, pointing toward hidden internal metrics.
Like what?
Well, tech companies sit on mountains of behavioral data that the public never sees. The report suggests these internal metrics show abysmal long-term user retention rates.
Oh, interesting.
The thesis is that executives know the novelty of spatial computing wears off quickly and that human beings simply do not want to live inside a headset for 8 hours a day.
So under this scenario, the executives are just monetizing the hype right now.
Precisely. They are cashing out at the absolute peak of the market's imagination, securing their billions before the reality of the product's failure destroys their market capitalization.
Okay, monetizing a doomed product makes a kind of cynical, self-preserving business sense. You sell the sizzle before the public realizes there's no stake.
Exactly.
But these are foundational tech giants with limitless capital. I mean, if a specific piece of hardware fails, they usually just absorb the loss and pivot to the next thing. Fleeing entirely into hard assets implies a systemic threat, not just a product flop. Does the source's data model a scenario where the technology actually works?
Yes. And the author's second scenario models exactly that. And honestly, the implications discussed in the report are much more severe.
How so?
Scenario 2 posits that the technology will succeed perfectly, exactly as advertised. However, their internal economic modeling shows that the successful deployment of these AI and VR systems will trigger a catastrophic destabilization of the global economy.
Wait, a catastrophic destabilization?
Yeah. The author argues that tech insiders realize the massive job displacement, combined with the shifting of human attention and commerce entirely into virtual spaces, will erode the foundation of our current financial system.
Hold on, here's where it gets really interesting to me. If they possess internal data showing their product will crash the economy, wouldn't they be legally liable for leading their investors into that collapse?
You would think so.
I mean, that sounds like textbook fiduciary malfeasance. They have a legal obligation to protect the financial interests of their shareholders.
They do, yes.
Wait, no. If they're using those SEC-approved algorithmic selling plans you mentioned earlier, they must have covered themselves legally in the fine print.
Exactly.
Because if I'm an executive orchestrating that kind of exit, I am burying my legal immunity in the absolute most boring, unreadable part of the public filings.
And you would look exactly where the author of this report looked, the risk factor footnotes of the Form 10-K.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah, the report explores how corporate law actually functions in reality versus theory. Fiduciary malfeasance is incredibly difficult to prove in a courtroom when every action an executive takes is technically compliant with SEC rules.
Because they checked all the boxes.
Exactly. They aren't breaking the rules. The analysis argues they are utilizing the rules exactly as written by their corporate counsel to hide in plain sight.
The 10K footnotes are where the actual truth lives. Because, you can exaggerate in a press release all you want, but lying on a 10K is a federal crime under Sarbanes-Oxley. The author highlights a specific risk factor section from a major hardware manufacturer known for spatial computing, right?
Yes, and the report frames this specific 10K as a masterclass in legal indemnification. The author pulls filings from this company from 3 years ago.
And what did they say back then?
Back then, the risk factors were entirely standard boilerplate. They warned investors about mundane things like potential supply chain disruptions, fluctuating semiconductor costs, standard macroeconomic headwinds.
Sure, just basic business risks.
Right. But when the author examines their most recent filing, there is a distinct, heavily lawyered addition. Buried deep in the text is a paragraph warning about, and the report quotes this directly unforeseen macroeconomic shifts resulting from rapid user adoption of spatial computing environments.
Wow. Let me get this straight. On one browser tab, the public is watching slick, high-budget launch videos featuring charismatic executives promising a frictionless digital paradise.
Yep.
On the other tab, the SEC database that almost nobody reads, those exact same executives, are formally warning the federal government about potential macroeconomic destruction caused by their own product.
That is what the filings suggest.
And then the very next day, the algorithm executes a $50 million sale of their personal stock. It really does read like they're writing their own get-out-of-jail-free cards. So what does this all mean for the average person?
According to the forensic analysis, it is a perfectly executed algorithmic market maneuver. The report argues that these executives are leveraging the inherent optimism of the middle class.
Oh, that's dark.
It is. Retail investors genuinely believe in the promise of the technology, so they continually buy into the market. That buying pressure acts as a necessary buffer. It absorbs the downward impact of the executives dumping their shares, keeping the stock price artificially elevated and stable, while the insiders head for the exits.
So the author's conclusion is that public optimism is literally funding the impending market correction. Let's play devil's advocate for a second, because anyone encountering this analysis is going to wonder if the author is just finding patterns in random noise. We need to really test this hypothesis of a coordinated exodus.
That's a fair point.
Because the skeptics have a very valid counter-argument. They will say, look, these tech founders are human beings. They've been running high-stress, publicly traded conglomerates for 20 years. They are getting older.
Right. They just want a break.
Yeah, maybe they just want to retire, step down from the board, buy a private island somewhere, or fund a massive philanthropic foundation. And as for the changes in the 10K...
just normal legal updates.
Exactly. Skeptics will point out that corporate compliance lawyers constantly update boilerplate text to prevent frivolous lawsuits. How does the author prove this isn't just the normal corporate life cycle?
Well, the author anticipates that exact counterargument, and the rebuttal rests entirely on the mathematics of coordination. The report concedes that if one CEO, or even a handful of executives, decide to accelerate their vesting and sell their stock to retire, that is standard statistical noise.
Sure, people retire all the time.
Right. But the data presented shows something entirely different in terms of scale and timing.
It's the fact that it's 50 companies simultaneously.
Yes. It is the simultaneous action across a fiercely competitive sector. The report tracks senior leadership teams across 50 different technology conglomerates, all accelerating their equity divestment in the exact same 18-month window.
Which is wild.
And they are doing it directly preceding the foundational rollout of their new AI infrastructure. The author argues that mathematically, 50 disconnected, highly competitive entities do not execute the exact same drastic financial maneuver at the exact same time by pure coincidence.
No, that definitely sounds like a signal.
The report defines this as a definitive market signal, yes.
It's like playing high-stakes poker against someone who has access to the security camera footage of your cards. It's not that they're necessarily better at the game, but they have a distinct structural information advantage. You think you're both looking at the same board, but they are playing a completely different hand based on data you can't see.
That concept of asymmetric information is actually the cornerstone of the report's final section. The executives are operating on data sets that the retail public simply doesn't possess.
Right.
Furthermore, the author tracks where this liquidated capital is actually flowing. If these executives were simply retiring to play golf, the report notes we would see their wealth flowing into standard wealth preservation vehicles.
Like conservative municipal bonds, broad market index funds, or standard philanthropic trusts.
Exactly. Standard retirement moves.
But the financial forensics show the capital is flowing somewhere else entirely.
Yeah. The analysis tracks the capital flows into private agricultural land, remote real estate holding companies, and decentralized digital currencies.
So things completely off the grid.
Right. These are asset classes specifically chosen because they are disconnected from the traditional fiat financial system and the digital grid. The author argues that these financial maneuvers do not reflect the behavior of executives entering peaceful retirement.
They reflect the behavior of individuals building isolated fortresses. Like, if one neighbor builds an underground bunker, you think, okay, they're just eccentric. But if all the structural engineers and architects in town suddenly build bunkers at the exact same time, you should probably check the weather forecast.
That is a very apt analogy. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the terrifying part is that asymmetric information advantage.
Yeah.
These insiders have the raw research and development data. They have the psychological profiles mapping exactly how their algorithms interact with human dopamine receptors. The author's thesis suggests that whatever they saw in that internal modeling made them decide to extract their wealth and distance themselves from the blast radius.
So while they are selling us a digital utopia where we never have to leave our houses and can attend meetings as, like, legless avatars, their actual retirement plan is buying a physical herd of cattle in New Zealand.
Pretty much.
It's the ultimate do as I say, not as I do maneuver.
The report concludes that when you strip away the public relations marketing, the SEC data only measures action. And the actions recorded in these filings suggest that the foundational money of the tech sector is executing a massive, unprecedented withdrawal from the very digital ecosystem they are actively constructing.
Wow.
The author views this as the ultimate financial hedge, selling a digital future to the public while legally securing a physical past for themselves.
Which brings us to the core takeaway of this deep dive. If there is one overarching lesson the author wants you to grasp, it is this: do not listen to what the board of directors says on a stage. Watch what their accountants file with the government.
Right. The press release is the distraction, but the Form 10K is the confession.
Exactly. As the report urges, take a hard look at your own portfolio. Turn up your screen brightness, really look at it. In a landscape defined by asymmetric information, you are the architect of your own financial defense.
You really are. The patterns of global wealth transfer outlined in the report are incredibly detailed. The author makes a compelling case that this silent mass exodus is fully visible, provided you know how to read the filings.
Yeah. The author's ultimate warning is clear: do not blindly serve as the exit liquidity for the elite. The data is all there in black and white. And before we go, I want to leave you with one final chilling question to mull over, something that builds on the premise of this entire analysis.
Let's hear it.
If the very creators of our immersive digital future, the smartest engineers and architects of our time, are utilizing billions of dollars to buy remote physical agricultural land and distance themselves from society, what exactly do they know about the psychological toll of living inside these virtual realities that the rest of us are about to find out the hard way?